Take the baker downstairs and make sure she never leaves this building alive." The command fell from Dante Moretti's lips so calmly that the entire ballroom went silent. Moments earlier, the charity gala had glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, filled with politicians, celebrities, and men who smiled only when they wanted something. Now every eye had turned toward the plus-size woman standing beside an overturned dessert cart, her white apron stained with chocolate, her hands trembling around a silver serving tray. Her name was Clara Bennett, a 32-year-old baker who owned a struggling neighborhood shop in Queens called Clara's Hearth. She had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing a 6-tier wedding-style cake for the Moretti Foundation Gala because one successful event could keep her bakery open another month. Instead, she was being accused of trying to poison the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast. Dante Moretti stood at the center of the room in a tailored black suit, tall, controlled, and cold enough to make powerful men avoid his gaze. At 38, he controlled shipping companies, luxury hotels, and an underground empire no federal investigation had managed to break. His enemies called him merciless. His allies called him untouchable. Since his younger brother's betrayal and death 6 years earlier, Dante trusted no one, loved no one, and never gave a second warning. Clara had heard the stories, but she had never imagined she would be kneeling on polished marble while 2 armed guards waited for permission to drag her away. "I didn't poison anything," she said, forcing her voice not to break. A woman in a silver gown laughed near the front table. Vanessa Vale, a socialite who had spent the evening criticizing the dessert menu, lifted her champagne glass and looked Clara up and down. Of course, she tasted everything first. Look at her. A few guests laughed. Clara's cheeks burned, but she did not lower her eyes. She had heard cruel jokes since high school from customers who assumed a chubby baker lacked discipline, and from an ex-fiancé who told her no powerful man would ever choose a woman built like her. She had survived every insult by smiling, working and feeding people who needed comfort. But tonight, kindness had placed her directly in danger. 20 minutes earlier, Clara had noticed a waiter switch Dante's plate after the kitchen staff had finished service. She had seen a faint blue powder beneath the dark chocolate glaze and knocked the dessert from Dante's hand before he took a bite. The plate shattered. Security rushed in. Then another server claimed Clara had added the powder herself. A tiny glass vial was found inside her flour bag. The evidence looked perfect because someone had made it look perfect. Dante stepped closer until the shine of his shoes stopped inches from Clara's knees. The room seemed to shrink around them. "You expect me to believe you attacked my staff, destroyed my plate, and somehow became the victim?" he asked. Clara looked up at him. Fear tightened her chest, but something in his face stopped her from begging. Beneath his controlled expression was exhaustion, the kind she recognized from people who had spent too long expecting betrayal. "No," she replied. "I expect you to believe your own eyes. That waiter disappeared the second the plate broke." Dante's jaw hardened. No one spoke to him that directly, especially not while accused of murder. One guard reached for Clara's arm, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me." Vanessa laughed again. She should be grateful anyone would. Dante's eyes shifted toward Vanessa, and the laughter died instantly. Then he looked back at Clara. She was still frightened, still humiliated, but she was not pleading for mercy. She was watching the exits, the staff doors, and every face in the room as if she were trying to protect him from something none of his trained men had noticed. "Search the building," Dante ordered. His chief of security leaned closer. "Boss, we already have the poison and the suspect." "Then search it again." Clara's hope rose for half a second, until Dante added, "Take her downstairs." The guards pulled her to her feet. Her bakery contract slipped from her apron and landed near Dante's shoe. He bent, picked it up, and saw the handwritten note clipped behind it. It was an old hospital recipe card, yellowed at the edges, bearing the name of a volunteer baker who had delivered food during a blizzard 12 years earlier. Dante stared at the looping signature. Clara Bennett. His expression changed for the first time all night. 12 years ago, after an ambush left him bleeding in an abandoned church, a young woman had found him, hidden him beneath bakery blankets, and kept him alive until help arrived. He had never learned her full name. He remembered only her warm voice, the scent of cinnamon, and the small burn scar on her right wrist. Dante looked up as Clara struggled against the guard, and his gaze dropped to the pale crescent scar beside her thumb. "Stop," he said. The guards froze. Dante crossed the room, seized Clara's wrist with surprising gentleness, and stared at the mark as though the dead had just spoken. Clara went still. "Where did you get this scar?" he asked. Before she could answer, the ballroom doors slammed shut, the lights went out, and a man's voice whispered through the darkness, "You should have killed her when you had the chance." The first gunshot shattered a chandelier, but Dante Moretti moved before the crystal hit the floor. He pulled Clara against his chest, turned his back toward the darkness, and covered her with his body while his guards drew their weapons. "Emergency lights. Lock every exit. Nobody leaves," he commanded, his voice cutting through the screams. Red lights flickered on along the ballroom walls, revealing overturned chairs, terrified guests, and glittering shards scattered across the marble. Clara's breath caught as she realized Dante was still holding her. The same man who had ordered her death less than a minute earlier now stood between her and an unseen shooter. "Are you hurt?" he asked, lowering his voice only for her. Clara shook her head. "No, but the shot didn't come from the balcony." Dante's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" She pointed toward the broken chandelier. The chain snapped from the side. Whoever fired was near the service corridor. His chief of security, Marcus Hale, stepped closer. "Boss, let us move you to the safe room." Dante ignored him. His attention remained on Clara, studying her with a suspicion that was no longer entirely cold. "You notice a great deal for a baker. Bakers notice timing," she said. 1 minute ruins bread. 1 second can ruin a life." For the first time, something almost human moved behind Dante's expression. Then a guard rushed from the kitchen, carrying an abandoned waiter's jacket. Inside the pocket was a second glass vial identical to the one found in Clara's flour bag. The room filled with whispers. Vanessa Vale went pale but quickly lifted her chin. "That proves nothing. She could have planted both." Dante turned toward her so slowly that Vanessa stepped backward. "Use her name," he said. "What?" "Her name is Clara Bennett. You will use it with respect, or you will leave my building without the protection you arrived with." Vanessa's mouth closed. Dante faced the guests. "The gala is over. Every person here will be searched. Anyone who objects may explain themselves downstairs." No one moved. With a single sentence, he had transformed a room full of senators, CEOs, and socialites into obedient witnesses. Clara had never seen power used so quietly. It frightened her, but not as much as the gentleness with which he removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. "You're shaking," he said. "I was almost executed over a cake. You were accused of threatening my life, and you believed it." Dante's jaw tightened. "I believe evidence." Clara looked at the vial in the guard's hand. "Then believe all of it." Before he could answer, she noticed a faint chemical odor rising from the broken dessert plate near the stage. She pulled away from him and crossed the room. Marcus tried to stop her, but Dante raised one hand. Clara crouched beside the shattered porcelain without touching it. The blue powder had begun turning grey where it mixed with the chocolate. "This isn't meant to kill instantly," she said. "It reacts with heat." Dante came beside her. "Meaning?" "Meaning the poison wasn't only on your plate. It may be inside the warming cabinet." Panic spread through the catering staff. Clara ran toward the kitchen, and Dante followed, ignoring Marcus's protest. Inside, steam clouded the stainless steel counters. Dozens of covered plates waited beneath heat lamps for the late service. Clara yanked the cabinet plug from the wall. A sharp odor escaped through the vents. "Open the back doors," she shouted. "Get everyone away from the kitchen." Dante gave the order, and his men obeyed her without question. Within seconds, the room was cleared. Clara leaned against a counter, breathing hard. Dante stood several feet away, watching her as if the answer to a 12-year mystery had appeared in front of him. His gaze fell again to the scar on her wrist. "The church near Whitestone," he said. Clara's face changed. "What did you say?" 12 years ago, a blizzard. You found a wounded man behind the altar." Her eyes widened. She remembered the stranger in the torn black coat, barely conscious, refusing to give his name. She had wrapped him in delivery blankets, pressed towels against his wound, and fed him warm cinnamon milk while they waited for help. "That was you," she whispered. Dante stepped closer. You saved my life. Clara's knees weakened, but she held his gaze. And tonight you ordered mine taken. The words struck harder than any accusation shouted across the ballroom. Dante looked away for a moment, something like shame breaking through his control. The order is withdrawn. That doesn't erase it. No, he said quietly, it doesn't. He reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and called the manager of Clara's bank. In less than 30 seconds, he purchased the overdue loan, threatening her bakery, and ordered every penalty removed. Clara stared at him. I don't want to owe you. You don't. Then why? Dante's eyes met hers. Because 12 years ago you helped a stranger without asking what he could give you. Tonight, you saved everyone in that ballroom while they were laughing at you. Before Clara could respond, Marcus entered carrying a tablet. Boss, we recovered security footage from the service corridor. Dante pressed play. The missing waiter appeared on screen, placing the vial inside Clara's flour bag. Then another figure stepped from the shadows and handed him an envelope. Clara leaned closer, expecting to see Vanessa or one of Dante's rivals. Instead, the figure turned toward the camera, revealing the face of Marcus Hale, the man standing directly behind them. Clara looked up, but Marcus already had a gun raised. You should have let him kill you, he told her. Dante moved in front of Clara, shielding her again, as Marcus locked the kitchen door and smiled. Now I'll have to finish both of you myself. Marcus Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. Move away from her, Dante. The kitchen's red emergency lights washed the stainless steel counters in blood-coloured shadows, while poisoned steam still curled from the unplugged warming cabinet. Dante stood directly in front of Clara, broad shoulders blocking Marcus's aim. He had trusted Marcus for 8 years, given him access to every safe house, every shipment, and every weakness in the Moretti Empire. Yet his voice remained steady. You planted the vial in her flour bag. Marcus smiled. I needed someone no one would defend. A broke, overweight baker surrounded by people already eager to blame her was perfect. Clara flinched, but Dante's hand reached behind him and found hers. He did not look back. He simply held her fingers as if reminding her that she was no longer standing alone. Say her name, Dante ordered. Marcus laughed. Still pretending this is about respect? You ordered Clara Bennett's death 10 minutes ago. Dante's grip tightened around her hand. And I will spend the rest of my life regretting it. You won't have that much time. Marcus fired. Dante pulled Clara down as the bullet struck a metal shelf above them, sending pans crashing across the floor. Clara crawled behind the center island while Dante overturned a steel cart for cover. Marcus fired again, but the poisoned haze blurred his vision. The service door. Dante whispered, When I move, run. Clara shook her head. He'll shoot you. That is not your decision. You don't get to order my death and then order me to abandon you. Even in the chaos, Dante looked at her with stunned respect. Clara grabbed a 50-pound sack of flour from the bottom shelf. When Marcus stepped closer, she tore it open and shoved it across the polished floor. Dante kicked the bag, sending a white cloud into the air. Marcus coughed and fired blindly. Dante crossed the distance, struck the gun from his hand, and drove him against the refrigerator door. Marcus reached for a knife, but Clara slammed a heavy baking tray onto his wrist. The knife clattered away. For one brief second, Dante and Clara faced the danger together, his body protecting hers while her courage protected him. Then the fire alarm erupted. Sprinklers burst overhead, flooding the kitchen and turning the flour into slippery paste. Marcus drove his shoulder into Dante, grabbed the fallen weapon, and escaped through the service door. Dante started after him, but Clara caught his sleeve. A dark stain spread across his side where the bullet had grazed him. You're hurt. It's nothing. That is what bleeding men always say before collapsing in inconvenient places. She pulled him behind the counter and pressed a clean towel against the wound. Dante watched her work with the same calm focus she had shown 12 years earlier inside the abandoned church. Her hands were shaking now, but they never stopped helping him. Why did you come back for me that night? He asked. Clara kept pressure on the wound. Because you were dying. You didn't know me. I didn't need to know you. Dante's expression softened, but the moment ended when the kitchen doors burst open. Moretti guards entered with weapons raised. At their front was Vanessa Vale, her silver gown soaked from the sprinklers, tears streaming down her face. "Dante, thank God!" She rushed toward him, but he lifted one hand, stopping her several feet away. "How did Marcus get access to the kitchen cameras?" Vanessa hesitated. "How would I know?" Clara noticed a smear of blue powder on the edge of Vanessa's jeweled purse. "Because you carried the poison," she said. Every face turned toward her. Vanessa stared at the purse, then slapped it closed. That powder came from the ballroom. She must have put it there. Clara rose slowly. Dante's jacket still hung around her shoulders, wet and heavy but strangely comforting. "I never touched your purse." Vanessa's fear vanished behind a cruel smile. "Who will believe you? By morning, every news station will know a desperate baker tried to assassinate Dante Moretti after he refused to pay her debts." Dante stepped beside Clara. "No one releases that story." His guards lowered their phones immediately. Vanessa's smile faded. "You would protect her over me? Our engagement announcement is scheduled for midnight. My family's shipping votes are the only reason your Newport deal survives." Clara looked at Dante. "Engagement?" The single word carried more pain than she intended. Dante's face hardened, but not at her. "There is no engagement." Vanessa moved closer. "There will be, unless you want half your captains to turn against you." Before Dante could answer, every phone in the room buzzed. A video had been sent to the Moretti Council and 3 major news outlets. It showed Clara entering the kitchen earlier that evening, carrying the flour bag containing the poison. The recording had been edited to make her appear guilty. Beneath it was a photograph of Dante purchasing her bakery loan minutes after the attack, making the payment look like a reward. Vanessa lifted her chin. "Now it looks like you hired her." Dante took Clara's hand in front of everyone. "Then I will stand beside her until the truth is exposed." A guard suddenly shouted from the loading dock. They ran outside into the cold rain and found Clara's delivery van with its doors open. Painted across the side in red letters were 5 words: "Confess before midnight or burn." Clara stared through the rain. Inside the van sat a photograph of her bakery, taken only minutes earlier. Through its front window, flames were already rising. "No," Clara whispered as flames climbed behind the bakery windows. "That place is all I have." She ran toward the entrance, but Dante caught her around the waist before she reached the shattered glass. Heat rolled across the sidewalk, carrying the smell of burning sugar, scorched wood, and the cinnamon bread she had prepared for the next morning. "Let me go," she cried, struggling against him. "My mother's recipes are inside, and you will die before you reach them. You don't understand. I understand losing something you cannot replace." His voice broke just enough to make her stop. Fire engines turned onto the Queen's Street, their sirens piercing the rainy night. Dante pulled Clara behind him as part of the roof collapsed, sending sparks into the darkness. For one terrible moment, she simply watched her life disappear. The bakery had been her mother's dream, then her refuge after her fiancé abandoned her, and finally the only place where no one could make her feel too large, too ordinary, or too difficult to love. Now the painted sign above the door cracked and fell into the flames. Clara sank onto the wet pavement without making a sound. Dante removed his jacket from her shoulders, wrapped it more tightly around her, and knelt beside her despite the blood soaking through his shirt. "Look at me," he said softly. She kept staring at the fire. "You cannot buy this back." "I know. You bought my loan as though money could erase what you did." "I know." His answer carried no command, no excuse. He reached for her hand, but stopped before touching it. "May I?" Clara finally looked at him. The most feared man in the city was kneeling in the rain, waiting for her permission. She placed her trembling hand in his. Dante closed his fingers around it carefully. "You saved my life twice," he said, "and I nearly took yours because I trusted evidence designed by a traitor. I cannot undo that, Clara, but I can believe you now." A firefighter approached and explained that the main floor was lost, though the rear storage room might survive. Clara suddenly stood. "The security server." Dante rose beside her. "What about it?" "I installed cameras after someone broke my windows last winter. The footage uploads online every 5 minutes. Dante handed his phone to her. Clara entered her password, opened the bakery's security account, and searched through the evening recordings. At first there was only an empty kitchen and rain falling behind the building. Then a black sedan appeared in the alley 2 hours before the gala. Marcus stepped from the driver's side. Vanessa emerged from the passenger door wearing a coat over her silver gown. Dante's face became stone. On the recording, Vanessa poured liquid near the bakery's rear entrance, while Marcus carried a red fuel container inside. The camera had captured their voices through an open window. "Once the baker is blamed, Dante loses the council," Vanessa said. "And if he survives the poison?" Marcus answered with a laugh, Clara recognized instantly. "Then I finish what I started at the Whitestone Church. I framed Luca for betraying him 12 years ago. I can frame one frightened baker tonight." Dante stopped breathing. Rain struck his face, but he did not blink. Luca Moretti, the younger brother Dante had condemned as a traitor, had died before he could defend himself. For 6 years, Dante had carried hatred like armor because loving his brother had made the betrayal unbearable. Now the truth was burning across a small phone screen. "Marcus arranged the ambush," Clara said. Dante replayed the words, his thumb shaking for the first time. "Luca tried to warn me." His voice sounded distant. I refused to listen. Clara saw grief replace the coldness in his eyes. He turned away, but she touched his arm. "You were lied to." I chose the lie because anger hurt less than grief. Clara did not offer forgiveness he had not asked for. She simply stood beside him beneath the flashing red lights, close enough that he no longer faced the truth alone. Dante sent the recording to every Moretti captain and ordered Marcus's access to the ports, accounts, and safe houses revoked. Within seconds, replies appeared. Some captains pledged loyalty, others remained silent. Then Vanessa's father called. Dante answered on speaker. "Announce the engagement before midnight," the older man demanded, "or the council votes you out and hands control to Marcus." Dante looked at Clara. "There will be no engagement." "Then choose carefully," the man warned. "Your empire or the baker." Dante's answer was immediate. "Clara Bennett is not a bargaining chip." He ended the call and ordered his guards to take Clara to a secure home. "You're coming with me," she said. "I have to stop the council vote." "Marcus wants you there." "Marcus wants me dead," Dante replied. "There is a difference." Clara stepped closer and pressed a clean cloth against his wounded side. "Then stop acting like your life belongs only to you." Their eyes held in the rain, the distance between them disappearing. Dante covered her hand with his. "When this is over, I will rebuild your bakery exactly as it was." Clara shook her head. "Build it safer, not the same." A faint warmth touched his expression. "Safer," he promised. As Dante turned to speak with his guards, Clara's phone vibrated inside her apron. A photograph appeared showing Dante entering the Moretti Council building. Beneath it was a message from Marcus: "Come alone to the Whitestone Church before midnight, or the next bullet reaches his heart. Tell Dante and the council chamber explodes." Clara looked at the man who had finally chosen to protect her, then at the clock glowing above a nearby pharmacy. 11:23. She slipped the phone into her pocket, kissed Dante's cheek before courage could fail her, and whispered, "I'm sorry." When Dante turned back seconds later, Clara Bennett had disappeared into the rain. Clara reached the Whitestone Church at 11:41, soaked from the rain and breathing hard. The abandoned building looked exactly as she remembered it from 12 years earlier, with boarded windows, cracked stone steps, and a rusted cross leaning above the entrance. She pushed through the wooden doors and found dozens of candles burning along the aisle. Marcus stood near the altar, holding a remote detonator in one hand and a pistol in the other. Vanessa waited beside him, her silver gown hidden beneath a black coat. "The loyal baker arrives," Marcus said, "right on time." Clara kept her hands visible. "You threatened Dante. I'm here. Let him go." Vanessa laughed. "He isn't here. He's walking into the council chamber while every captain believes he hired you to poison him." Marcus gestured toward a laptop on the altar. A live security feed showed Dante entering the Moretti headquarters with 6 guards. Beneath the council table, a blinking device counted down from 18 minutes. Clara's stomach tightened. "You said the chamber would explode if I warned him." "It will explode whether you warn him or not," Marcus replied. "But first, you will record a confession. You will say Dante paid you to stage the poisoning so he could accuse innocent families and seize their territory. When the council sees it, they will remove him before the bomb finishes the job. Vanessa stepped closer, her face sharp with contempt. Try to look convincing. People already believe women like you are desperate for attention. Clara's fear hardened into something steadier. You burned my bakery, framed an innocent man, and murdered Dante's brother because you needed everyone to underestimate you. She looked directly at Vanessa. You should understand how dangerous that mistake can be. Marcus raised the gun. Sit down. Clara obeyed, but her eyes moved across the church. The old bell rope still hung beside the confessional. The wooden floor dipped near the altar where water damage had weakened the boards years ago. She remembered every corner because she had once spent 4 freezing hours there keeping a wounded stranger alive. Marcus started recording. Speak. Clara faced the camera. My name is Clara Bennett. Tonight I was accused of poisoning Dante Moretti. She paused. Marcus lifted the pistol. Continue. The truth is that Marcus Hale and Vanessa Vale planned the attack. Marcus framed Luca Moretti 12 years ago, and Vanessa carried the poison into the gala. Marcus struck the laptop shut and crossed the aisle. Wrong confession. Before he reached her, Clara grabbed the bell rope and pulled with all her strength. The church bell thundered above them, startling Vanessa. Clara wrapped the rope around a fallen pew and yanked it sideways. The rotted floor beneath Marcus cracked. His leg plunged through the boards and the detonator slipped from his hand. Clara dove for it, but Vanessa seized her hair and dragged her backward. You think Dante chose you? Vanessa hissed. He chose a debt he could repay. Clara drove her elbow into Vanessa's ribs and broke free. No, he chose to believe me when believing me cost him everything. Across town, Dante stood before the Moretti Council as accusations filled the chamber. Screens around the room displayed the edited footage of Clara carrying the flour bag. Vanessa's father demanded a vote before midnight. Dante placed his phone on the table and played the bakery recording showing Marcus and Vanessa discussing Luca's betrayal. Several captains rose in shock. The footage could be fabricated, Vanessa's father shouted. Dante's eyes moved toward the wall clock. 11:47. Clara had vanished after receiving a message, and the kiss on his cheek felt less like goodbye than an apology. He remembered her words in the rain. Stop acting like your life belongs only to you. Then one of his guards recovered Clara's deleted notification from the gala network. Whitestone Church. Come alone. Council chamber explodes. Dante looked beneath the table and saw a faint red light. Everybody out, he ordered. Panic erupted. His men found the bomb, but the timer showed 11 minutes and the exits suddenly locked. Dante called Clara. At the church, her phone rang inside her pocket while she struggled with Vanessa. Marcus freed himself from the broken floor, grabbed the detonator, and aimed his gun at Clara. She answered the call without speaking. Dante heard the bell, Vanessa's scream, and Marcus say, At midnight, your confession dies with you. Clara, Dante said through the phone, step away from him. Marcus turned toward the entrance. Dante stood in the doorway, rain behind him, a gun lowered at his side. He had left the council chamber after ordering his guards to evacuate everyone through the service tunnel. You came alone, Marcus said. I came for her. Drop the weapon. Dante let his gun fall. Clara shook her head. Dante, don't. You saved my life when I was a stranger, he said, never taking his eyes from Marcus. Tonight, let me return the favor. Marcus smiled and pointed the pistol at Dante's heart. Clara saw Vanessa reaching for the detonator near the altar. She moved first, knocking Vanessa aside and catching the device before it struck the floor. Marcus fired. Dante staggered backward as Clara screamed his name. The church bell struck midnight, and the detonator's final light turned red in her hand. The red light on the detonator burned for one endless second, but nothing exploded. Clara stared at the device in her hand as a tiny message appeared across its screen. Signal blocked. Dante had ordered his men to activate the council building's emergency jammers before leaving, severing Marcus's connection to the bomb. Relief barely reached Clara before she saw Dante collapse against the church doors, one hand pressed to his chest. Dante! She ran to him and dropped to her knees. Marcus raised his weapon again, but Clara stepped in front of Dante, shielding him with her body. Move, Marcus warned. Her fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. No, Marcus laughed bitterly. He ordered your death tonight. And then he admitted he was wrong, risked his empire, and came here unarmed because my life mattered to him." Clara lifted her chin. "You spent 12 years turning loyalty into a weapon. You will not use mine against me." Marcus aimed at her heart, but Dante's voice rose behind her. "The mistake you keep making is believing she needs to be helpless for me to protect her." He pulled open his torn shirt, revealing the flattened bullet lodged in the protective vest beneath it. Marcus's confidence vanished. Dante surged forward, knocked the pistol aside, and drove him against a stone pillar. Marcus fought wildly, but the church doors burst open before he could reach another weapon. Moretti guards flooded the aisle, followed by police officers and members of the council who had seen Clara's live confession transmitted from the laptop before Marcus slammed it shut. Vanessa tried to slip through the side chapel, but Clara blocked her path. "Move," Vanessa snapped. Clara stood firm. "I spent years moving out of the way for people who thought they were more important than me. I'm done." Vanessa swung at her. Clara caught her wrist and held it until 2 officers arrived. Across the church, Marcus was forced to his knees. Dante stood over the man who had betrayed his brother, poisoned his allies, and nearly destroyed Clara's life. Everyone expected violence. Instead, Dante stepped back. "Take him," he said. "He will answer publicly for every life he ruined." Marcus stared up at him. "You've become weak." Dante looked toward Clara. Candlelight warmed her rain-soaked face as she stood beneath the same broken roof where she had once saved him. "No," he replied. "I finally have something stronger than fear." By sunrise, the bomb beneath the council chamber had been disabled. The unedited security footage cleared Clara of every accusation, and Marcus's records proved he had framed Luca Moretti years earlier. Vanessa and her father were charged for their part in the poisoning, arson, and conspiracy. The captains who had remained loyal elected Dante to continue leading them, but he changed the rules that had allowed fear to silence doubt. No sentence would ever again be carried out without proof examined by more than one trusted voice. Clara listened when he told her, then said quietly, "That rule came too late for your brother." Pain crossed his face. "Yes," she took his hand, "then let it protect the next person." 3 months later, Clara stood outside a new storefront on the same Queen's block. Above the door, a polished sign read Clara's Hearth. The brick walls had been reinforced, the ovens were new, and the rear entrance had security lights bright enough to turn midnight into morning. Dante had offered to rebuild everything, but Clara insisted on owning the bakery herself. He respected her choice. Instead of handing her a gift, he invested under a contract that gave her full control and required him to accept repayment in cinnamon rolls every Sunday. On opening morning, neighbours filled the sidewalk. Some had once whispered about her size or treated her kindness as weakness. Now they waited in line while Clara moved through the bakery with her shoulders straight and her head high. She had not changed her body to become worthy. She had changed the way she allowed the world to speak to her. Dante arrived without an entourage, carrying the yellow hospital recipe card he had found at the gala. "You kept it," she said. "It reminded me that once, when I believed everyone had a price, one woman helped me for nothing." He placed the card in a frame near the register, then turned to face her. "Clara Bennett, I cannot promise that my world will ever be simple, but I can promise you will never have to shrink yourself to stand beside me." Her eyes filled with tears. "And I cannot promise I will always agree with you. I am counting on that." He knelt in the warm morning light and opened a small velvet box. The bakery went silent. "I ordered your death because I saw evidence and not the woman in front of me. You taught me to look again. You saved my life twice, but more than that, you gave me a reason to live it differently. Will you let me spend it proving that I see you now?" Clara smiled through her tears. "Yes, but I choose the wedding cake." Laughter and applause filled the room as Dante slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed gently. The feared Mafia Boss had found peace not by conquering another enemy, but by trusting the woman everyone else had underestimated. And the chubby baker who once apologized for taking up space finally stood in the center of the room, loved exactly as she was. "So tell us, could you forgive someone who once doubted you, if they risked everything to make it right?" Share your answer below and subscribe to the channel for more stories where courage is seen, loyalty is rewarded, and love chooses the heart.